This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. As I always say, another very important show because things just get worse and worse and worse in our legal system. You know, look forward to today because tomorrow will be even worse. I remember somebody once said that. My father-in-law is a member of the Optimist Club. I think he may be getting less optimistic these days. He's actually a high member of that. But let me tell you what's been going on here. And it's not just with regard to the President of the United States, Joe Biden, the attempts to impeach the president, to convict the president, but it's in our private legal system as well. And I'm going to bring on in our third segment my very fine client, Jackie Beard Robinson, who was defamed by Melissa Gorga, the so-called star of Housewives of New Jersey, Andy Cohen, who was Anderson Cooper's boyfriend, so to speak, and NBC and Bravo. I'm going to tell that story because this tells you how these large vested interests, whether they're political interests, corporate interests, labor union interests, or other interests, really rule the school and how the little guy frequently gets screwed. Pardon the French. I want to talk first about the President of the United States, who is really, it's closing in on him. There's high water right now. It reminds me of a James Bond movie, you know, in a water-filled chamber with only about 6 inches left, and the president is able to breathe with what's left in terms of the air. Because it's not just the Democrats, but it's his own establishment political party that is trying to stab him in the back right now. But let's talk about, even before I get to that, about the Bidens. Joe Biden obviously is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. He has this Cheshire smile, makes everybody kind of feel at ease, makes me feel ill at ease, and his son, Hunter Biden. And it's not really in question that the two of them engaged in bribery and corruption with regard to the Ukraine. I don't need to get into the specifics of that. I'm losing my speech just thinking about it. Everybody knows the story. But the president our president asked the president of the Ukraine to look into that as a favor. Now, that was not a smart thing to do, given the previous witch hunt over Russian collusion allegations. In fact, it was dumb. I mean, everybody does dumb things. I do dumb things. The president sometimes does dumb things because he handed it to the Democrats. But it wasn't a crime, and it's not impeachable. And the reason the poor guy wanted to do it is because he has a worthless Justice Department that is infested by the Democrat deep state. And even his current Attorney General, Bill Barr, is little better than the last one, Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions, who went back to Alabama in disgrace. I love Alabama, by the way, but Sessions obviously is not my cup of tea at this point in time. So we're in a situation right now where the waters are rising, where the Democrats are ready to vote out articles of impeachment, which will then send everything over to the U.S. Senate. In the U.S. Senate, you have these never-Trumpers like Mitt Romney, who are stabbing him in the back, who, frankly, the establishment always wanted the president gone. They'd be happy to see him impeached and convicted in reality. Then one of their own could run, whether it's somebody like Romney or somebody like Lindsey Graham or any of the other, Marco Rubio, any of the other miscreants in the Senate, the two-faced twits that are in the Senate. So this is the danger that we face today. And this is why your Freedom Watch is at the forefront of taking action, as I say every week. Because, you know, I'm very proud of having started Judicial Watch. But when I started Judicial Watch, having conceived of it in 1994, it wasn't meant just to be an organization that collects documents, to hang on the wall, to boast on Fox News. It was an organization that was thought to be the People's Justice Department, bringing hard-hitting cases, real cases, where you have real clients that have an issue that can go against the government and bring about justice. So it was on this radio network 2 weeks ago, because Judicial Watch doesn't do these things. Freedom Watch does what Judicial Watch used to do when I ran it. I said that we were going to commission a citizens grand jury to indict Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, his half-wit son, for bribery and corruption in the Ukraine. Because you know that our Justice Department's not going to do that. The Attorney General, Bill Barr, has taken a dive twice in the last several weeks against James Comey, after the Inspector General, an Obama appointee, recommended his criminal prosecution. And also, where is the indictment with Andrew McCabe? And that's not going to happen either. If it does, it'll be so, half whatted that it won't amount to anything, particularly before a DC jury. They haven't even interviewed Carter Page. There's been stories out there they haven't interviewed anybody in the Russian collusion scandal. They're so-called conducting a counter investigation of the lead up to the Russian witch hunt. Well, where are they? They're reportedly off in Italy. Probably the Attorney General went because he wanted a better cup of cappuccino. The government could pay for a nice trip to Italy. Who wouldn't want to go to Italy? It's a great country. I have Italian clients, I can tell you that. And I used to be married to an Italian. So this is a complete whitewash of what's going on. And at the same time, the president's getting lynched. And what also happened this week is that the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who frequently comes on Hannity or other shows after having had a few martinis, revealing attorney-client information, by pure luck, the president wasn't indicted over the Russian collusion investigation, and Giuliani was riding high, doing high fives. Gee, I'm the savior here. Jay Sekulow, too, his colleague. But then he stuck his foot in it because he went over to the Ukraine. He's apparently done some things, which is giving the Democrats an excuse to even up the ante with regard to impeachment. Not that what he did was illegal, but the way he did it, was dumb. And now 2 of his associates have been indicted, you guessed it, by the Trump Justice Department, because Trump isn't in charge of his Justice Department. Neither is Attorney General Barr. It's this deep Democrat state that wants to destroy the president. So Giuliani's no longer Trump's lawyer. That was reported yesterday by John Gizzi of Newsmax, who's an old-time hand in Washington. I'm sure it'll be out more in the next few days. Couple that with the fact that never Trumpers in the Senate, like Mitt Romney, and never Trumpers outside of the Senate, like George Conway, the so-called husband of Kellyanne Conway, the White House counselor, is now calling for the quick impeachment of the president. And if you can really believe this, and this tells you something about Washington, D.C., George Conway is calling that all of the president's advisors be fired. That would include his wife. She's one of the top advisors, Kellyanne Conway. Now, I like Kellyanne. I think she's a nice person. I think she supports the president. But it's time for her to come clean on her relationship with George Conway. This is a security risk. If she's living with this guy who was shown the door, he wanted to be Solicitor General in a Trump Justice Department. Trump said, no, I'm not making you Solicitor General, just like he said to Andrew Napolitano, another never Trumper on Fox News and on Newsmax, that you're not going to be a Supreme Court justice. How can she, with any straight face, continue to be married to this guy? I mean, he's not even her equal in terms of looks. Not that that matters, but I mean, the guy's just pure ugly. I mean, and fat, and nothing against fat people. Believe me, I've been fat myself from time to time. So this is the problem that we have in Washington, D.C. You remember Mary Matlin and James Carville during the Clinton years? Mary Matlin, a big supporter of the president, of the Republican Party, and Carville, Bill Clinton's advisor, who actually played a role in committing a crime, which I got a finding that Clinton committed a crime in releasing the Privacy Act protected files of a woman that Clinton had harassed in the Oval Office, Kathleen Willey. The unreality, for lack of a better word, of that relationship. Well, look at Kellyanne Conway and George Conway. This is Washington. I mean, there's no such thing as truth. There's no such thing as doing what's right. There's no such thing as integrity. How can you be married to this guy and work for the president? You can't. So I hope that she's no longer living with him. Maybe they've gotten divorced or are separated, but this is a security risk. You say anything to your so-called husband, George Conway, it's going to be used against the president. We should demand an explanation from Kellyanne as to what is going on here, because it's reached critical mass, because Conway, along with other Bush Republicans, establishment Republicans, released a large op-ed calling for the president to be impeached and convicted. And then, of course, you have Bill Barr, who Hannity claims is conducting an investigation. Well, Hannity makes those claims because he wants people to listen. He wants to give them hope. But you know what? It's false hope. It's lying hope. That's why I have a problem with Hannity, because 90% of the time he's full of BS. I can't listen to him anymore. I turn it off and I watch the Golf Channel, where at least there's some reality. But Barr, what is he doing? Again, they haven't interviewed anybody, and no action has been taken. And to the extent that any report comes out of his investigation of the witch hunt that led up to Russia and everything else, or the Bidens, won't happen until after the election. So this is where we are today. And this is why you need Larry Klayman and you need a Freedom Watch, both in my public interest capacity and my private capacity. You need fearless lawyering. You need patriots. You need people that actually believe in something, who aren't slithering around Washington, D.C., trying to enrich themselves, and who call a spade, for lack of a better word. Now, when I come back, I'm going to talk about other hypocrisy that's out there and the action that we're going to be taking against the Bidens, in addition to citizens' grand juries. Because you need to know what's going on in the social media and in the media these days, because it's a full court press by the media, by Democrats on Capitol Hill, by never-Trumper establishment Republicans, by the courts to remove this president. If he's removed, this country goes down. You'll never see a country like we have it today. It'll be a socialist gulag. I'm going to be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org. Join our Justice League. Contribute to our cause, because we are your private Justice Department. You have no other.
Fearless.
This Klayman, he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
You don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Let me tell you about what happened just in the last week with regard to my statements on this radio show, that I was going to recommission a citizens' grand jury and have the Bidens indicted, because no one else will do it. The Justice Department won't do it. They can't even indict Comey. How are they going to indict the Bidens? It's not going to happen. So when I made that announcement, and I said that we are actually going to go for the legal jugular, so to speak, figuratively speaking, of the Bidens, because there needs to be justice here. There needs to be pushback. There needs to be the rule of law and the Constitution restored. No sooner did I say that on this channel, but YouTube suspended all of our podcasts and all of our videos on Freedom Watch's YouTube channel. I got a notice that I engaged in hate speech. Hate speech is saying that we're going to enforce the rule of law against Joe Biden. Of course, I also had Joel Gilbert on talking about Trayvon Martin, where a false witness was provided to try to get him the electric chair in Washington, D.C., in Florida, my native state. Well, when that happened, I knew how to solve it. I didn't lose a beat. I didn't lose any sleep. I was in Washington at the time on the Corsi case against Robert Mueller. So what did I do? I sent an email to the lawyer that represents Google-YouTube in my antitrust case that I filed for myself and Laura Loomer, rather Freedom Watch and Laura Loomer, which is now before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. That's Williams and Conley. That's Clinton's law firm of many leftist Democrats. And I said to this lawyer, you tell your client that unless our YouTube channel is restored in 24 hours by noon the following day, that I will bring a lawsuit against Google-YouTube. I will join the Bidens for colluding to take our site down, and you're going to have to answer to a court of law. I'm also going to inform the appellate court, the D.C. Circuit, of this shenanigans, because it makes our point as to why antitrust violations, restraints of trade are occurring in the discrimination against conservative speech. Well, of course, our channel was restored. Now, they used as an excuse what Joel said about Trayvon Martin. Joel didn't say anything that was hateful. He simply was talking about how a false witness tried to get George Zimmerman convicted and either given life imprisonment or the death penalty. But it's clear now, and it came out this week, that in fact I was right, that the Biden campaign and the Bidens themselves have been interfering with social media and with major media publications. Because earlier this week, Peter Schweitzer, who revealed the Ukraine scandal with the Bidens, wrote an editorial that was published in the New York Times. And it was the Biden campaign, a high-level official, that called the New York Times livid, demanding that it be taken down. And it was also published, and you can go Google it and find out, in many other publications that the Biden campaign and the Bidens have been intervening elsewhere to keep negative tweets by President Trump and others out of the media with regard to the Bidens' corruption. So you can count on this. I will be bringing a lawsuit, and I hope that the Bidens are listening. And Google-YouTube, you can listen to. I'm not bringing it against you because I told your lawyer I wouldn't do it if you restored us. But I'll tell you something. One false move in the future, and you're going to be joined too, but we'll be suing the Bidens for tortiously interfering with Google-YouTube. Because you know what? We actually get contributions off of what we do every week. When people see what we do, they like what they do, and they contribute. And we advertise on this show. So there is economic harm there. So Hunter and Joe Biden, you can count on being sued within the next week. And we're going to be commissioning our citizens' grand juries in the next few weeks, too. And we will be indicting you for your crimes in the Ukraine. I'm going to ask Peter Schweitzer to appear at that citizens' grand jury to offer testimony on what he knows. So, see, it's a full court press. Now, you're going to be listening shortly to Jackie Beard Robinson. She's going to tell you the injustice, and I will add to it, that was perpetrated against her, a private citizen, by our compromised and corrupt legal system. And it's not compromised and corrupt across the board, but there's enough of the corruption out there that keeps the little guy from getting justice. And it's not just the political elite in Washington, D.C., but it's the large corporations, the large labor unions. It's the rich and powerful that run roughshod over ordinary people, because the judges and arbitrators know who scratches their backs and butters their bread. Not all of them. They're honest ones like Judge Royce Lamberth, like retired Judge Stanley Sporkin and others. But there are a lot out there that play the game with the best interests. And that's why you're Larry Klayman and Freedom Watch. We're pushing back. I'm going to be right back with Jackie Beard Robinson to explain the outrage that occurred in her arbitration with NBC, Bravo, Melissa Gorga of the Housewives of New Jersey, and Andy Cohen, Anderson Cooper's boyfriend. I'll be right back.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with my very fine client and friend, Jackie Beard Robinson. She's a fashionista. She's a very, very talented woman. She lives in South Florida. She had an opportunity, by chance, to meet Melissa Gorga, the so-called star of Housewives of New Jersey, and entered into a joint venture with Melissa Gorga. Didn't work out. And vindictively and maliciously, Melissa Gorga, who you all know about if you watch TV, defamed her with regard to NBC and Bravo. Andy Cohen, he chimed in, Anderson Cooper's boyfriend, and they accused her of stealing merchandise after that joint venture ended. That is called defamation per se. In that case, you don't even have to prove maliciousness, even if a public figure is involved. I brought the lawsuit on behalf of Jackie in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida, which is where she lives. Generally, you bring a defamation case in the community where you live, where it hurts you the most. And the judge there, a Clinton appointee, transferred the case to arbitration because the release that was signed, see, Jackie wanted to be on Housewives of New Jersey to promote her business and other things. And she was invited on there by Melissa Gorga. So they gave her a release. She signed it. But it didn't include and it didn't allow for her to be defamed on that very same show and on Bravo with a claim that she had stolen merchandise when that joint venture unfortunately ended with Melissa Gorga. And it's general black letter law that you don't release an entity or a person from liability for something that hasn't occurred yet at the time you signed the release. Plus, Jackie is an ordinary person, a special person, but she's not of the financial wealth and power of NBC and Bravo. And if such a clause exists in a contract, a release is a contract, basically it's voidable. It's an unequal bargaining position. And this release was procured through fraud. But in any event, it was sent to arbitration. And the arbitration service is called JAMS. Now, these arbitrators are chosen. See, this was inserted into the release. And generally, you can't nullify that in the release, even if there's fraud, where the matter will be heard, even though the court in Florida sent it over, it still stood in effect. So it went to a corporation, a arbitration service by the name of JAMS. And these big corporations like these arbitration services because they tend to rule in their favor to get more business. That's why they put them in there. So we knew that, and that's why we're still fighting to get the case back in court. We're going to be taking an appeal of that referral by this Clinton judge. But we got a very bad ruling this week. The case sat there for almost a year in front of this arbitrator. We had all this briefing. We did a lot of work. And finally, I asked the arbitration service, I said, where is the opinion? Because, justice delayed is justice denied. Where is it? And you even have to pay for the arbitration. The defendants pay for half. Jackie had to pay for the other half. So you wanted your money's worth. So I said, look, you're asking us to pay money here, but where's the decision? Because there's been an injustice. The harm's ongoing. The harm to Jackie's reputation continues on. It needs to be rectified. In fact, people come up to her, in her daily walk of life and make reference to what was said. So they came back and they said, well, we'll give you the opinion after you pay us $10,500. And I said, well, that's not right. I said, give us the opinion, and we're going to pay you. We haven't stiffed you for anything. But they held back, and then they claimed that the arbitrator couldn't be found even after we paid them their $10,500, and it came out late. And it was written such a bad way. It was written like a 10-year-old would write it. It was clear that the arbitrator wrote it just in the last few days, and he made all these major errors, either intentionally or in a grossly negligent fashion, and found that Jackie didn't have a claim. Now, we're going to be appealing that inside of the arbitration. But we're also going to be taking it to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, the Federal Appeals Court, because we want the case sent back to the federal court, which is where it belongs, where we can have a jury of Jackie's peers hear it. So I want to introduce you to Jackie Beard Robinson. She's just like you. She's somebody who has been harmed by a compromised legal system, in this case, the concept of arbitration, which these arbitrators are in the hip pocket of big corporations. And I want you to hear from her specifically about what happened to her and how she feels about what happened to her. Because you see, today it's Jackie Robinson. Tomorrow, it could be you and your loved ones. And this is why I'm working so hard as a private lawyer and at Freedom Watch to reform the legal system, because it is a stacked deck against the little guy. And we've seen that with President Trump. He's not a little guy, but of course you have this tremendous political establishment on both sides of the aisle want to see him impeached and convicted. But it also happens with people like you and me and Jackie. So Jackie, welcome to Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Tell your story to our listeners, because they need to understand just how broken aspects of our legal system are today and what happened to you.
I'd like to just go back a little bit to this whole business situation that, and make it real clear about this, is that Melissa and I were in a business together. We had a store for a year. I was on The Housewives in New Jersey because they invited me to be on the show. I was never paid not one dime to be on that show, ever. So in December of 2016, when I ended our business relationship and they went on to start filming in January, Bravo called Jackie Beard Robinson to come on as a guest and tell my side of the story. Our case, Melissa and I were already finished and done in the court of law. We diminished our business together, and we were finished in January. So they called me in February to come there and to tell my side of the story. And I said, I hemmed and hawed about it, and I was like, I don't know. I mean, whatever. And she'd been on every media, channel saying that I stole her clothes in the middle of the night. Well, first of all, they never put not one single red cent into that business. It was totally mine. It was a storyline for her. So when they called me in February, after our business was already finished, done, we ended the whole legal matter. In January, they called me to come in February. So I went there, and all I said was my lawyers at that point in time said, just say that you did not steal your clothes in the middle of the night. So that's all I said. And so, they didn't get enough out of that. They had me sign this contract, blah, 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 that I usually sign when I go on to film. And basically the contract that I always sign says that anything that happens here today can be used on television. You can't, it's for the day. Okay, that's not a retroactive contract. That doesn't mean I can go back to January and February and the last year when I filmed, when they asked me to, that I even paid a dime for because I was just a guest on their show. This is February. And we ended our case in January, and my husband had written them a letter legally to say that if you defame me on national television, because you have on every media outlet, the newspapers, magazines, that we will sue you and we will seek legal damages. So, having said that, they invited me to come in February. My case with Melissa Gorga was closed and done. Okay, that's legally over with. So I went there to say I did not steal my own clothes because I didn't think that she would ever go on national television and say I stole her clothes in the middle of the night when she didn't put one red cent into it. It was a storyline for her. Clear, plain and simple, that's all it's ever been.
Well, I didn't mean to say that you went on to promote. What I was basically trying to say is that you went on to restore your reputation because obviously you're doing business, and if people think that you're a crook, you can't do business. And that's exactly
I didn't go into for myself or my business at all because I didn't even want to be on the show. I was always asked to be on the show, and I was never paid to be on the show. So I clearly went on there for one reason only. I did not want my reputation to be so trash that everyone thinks that I went on there for publicity. I went on there one time, and I wasn't even put on TV. They didn't even air the episode that I went there for. So they didn't even air it. So I signed a contract that said I would take it to arbitration that day forward, is what I understand. And they didn't even air the episode. So I don't see why that contract could ever be valid at all.
Well, it can't be valid. It was procured through fraud because they knew what they were going to do. They knew they were going to defame you when you signed it. Okay, and that's,
of course they did.
And that's,
of course they did.
Obviously, they wouldn't have done that. I mean, these people are not stupid. They're bright. But you see, ordinary people like you, and good people, I don't mean ordinary in that you're not special, but they use you as the whipping boy, as the fulcrum for ratings, to boost things up. They create scandal. Now, it's fine to have a good sense of humor, but you don't accuse somebody of being a crook. And that's what they did here. And that's why we went into federal court in Palm Beach County, and we asked for a jury to decide this for your peers.
That's where I think it should be, with a jury. It shouldn't be with an arbitrator of their choice, really.
Right. And the bigger story here is, from a public interest perspective, is that this is one method that large corporations, labor unions, and other big vested interests use to protect themselves. They write these clauses into releases and contracts with talent, your talent, and others. And they think that because they send it to these arbitration services, they're going to get a favorable decision. And they usually do, because the fact that they're getting favorable decisions brings more business to companies like JAMS. Now, I have requested that the arbitrator keep all of his communications with the arbitration service, JAMS. I'm prepared, with your permission, to sue JAMS if this thing isn't straightened out, because the decision, I want your take on this, looked like it was written by a 10-year-old in about 10 minutes. And this was after a year, after tens of thousands of dollars were paid for a legitimate decision by both sides. Give us your thoughts on what you read. I mean, to me, it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. 18 pages double-spaced, 9 pages typed. He's had that case for 9 months. He completely forgot that he had the case. When he said back in February, I'll rule next month on it, and you guys said, okay, that's March. You guys go to May, and you put in another motion to enter something in that was very important. And then October, finally, we had to remind him once again that, is he going to make a decision? Because I see on this JAMS, when you can appeal it, it takes 3 weeks. It took this guy 9 months to even figure out he had our case. case. I swear to God, he didn't even remember.
Well, what made matters
worse. He could have remembered what you talked about when you first talked to him in February. There's no way he could have remembered any of that when he gave his decision in October.
No, and he obviously didn't. I mean, it's so clearly wrong, and I'm going to put it up on my private website, LarryKlayman.com, because I'm representing you in my private capacity. But it does have a public interest aspect to it, because this is the way ordinary people, you and me, ordinary folk, are treated frequently in our legal system. And it's an outrage. But what really was an outrage is that when I inquired as to why there was no decision coming out, and the last thing I filed was a New York case which incorporated a statute in California into that case as precedent of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, a very prestigious circuit, which said that you can't release someone for something that hasn't happened yet. But the arbitrator writes, oh, you didn't really cite any New York law. We had lots of New York cases in there. It's clear you didn't even look at anything. And then if you go back at the time in the last few weeks that I said, when are we going to get a decision? Justice delayed is justice denied. That's what I implied. They said, well, you pay us $10,500 and then we'll give you a decision. I said, give us the decision. Give us a decision now. We're not going to stiff you. I mean, but really? They knew that this thing was fixed, and they wanted to get the payment before they issued this ridiculous and flawed decision. It was a fraud upon a fraud in many ways. So we've got rights here. We're going to be taking an appeal of the ruling by the judge in Palm Beach to send it to arbitration. We're going to be appealing inside of the arbitration service. We're going to be asking for a new arbitrator. We're going to be putting them on notice that if they don't play it straight, that they're going to be sued for what went on. I've asked them to retain all the documentation between the arbitration service jams and the arbitrator. You can imagine what it says. They're going to freak out if that has to be produced. But in a much smaller way, it's exactly what's happening with regard to a lot of things that are in the news these days. The fact that the rule of law is no longer in existence. Our Constitution isn't followed. You were denied due process of law and equal protection. And you deserve as much rights as big mega corporations that are worth trillions of dollars. But it's not the way it works. So I want to thank you, Jackie, for being such a brave person. Maybe that's why you're on Bravo. We'll call it Bravo. But
thank you, Larry, so much.
Braveheart.
And it's been great. Good talking to you today.
Yeah, we're going to win this case in the end. I can assure you of that. But it's going to be a long and hard battle, and we cannot let it go because justice cannot be denied. I'm going to be right back with the verdict section of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org and go to ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org and CorseyDefenseFund.com and support our various cases. Jackie, thank you, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you, Larry. Talk to you soon.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Now, fellow patriots, this is why we need to reform our legal system. Whether it's the judges, whether it's arbitrators, whether it's corrupt lawyers, whether it's bar associations that try to eliminate lawyers that take on the rich and powerful or the vested interests on the left, and that's certainly increasing. And next week's show I'm going to dedicate to that issue because there's a lot of examples of bar associations trying to remove conservative lawyers, including yours truly, I might add, and they're not going to succeed. But this is what we face today. And you see it with the president. You see it with Jackie Robinson. You see it with Larry Klayman. You see it with others in society. And you see it with yourself. Now, remember that all of you are under mass surveillance by our intel community, by National Security Agency, by the CIA, by the FBI. The president can't even have a phone call in the Oval Office with a president from another country without being wiretapped. We live in an Orwellian state. We live in a police state. And I say this to fellow conservatives. Wake up, okay? Not all conservatives believe like I do and like you do. They think a police state is great. When it comes to law enforcement, they can do whatever they want. But, you know, on the other side of the coin, that kind of power is the kind of centralized power that the left believes in. A police state is something which is generally utilized by socialist and communist countries. Can't have right to carry arms. Second Amendment would be out. Can't speak freely. You can see what's happening in Hong Kong today, in communist China. You can see what happens in North Korea, in Iran, and other places. And this is why we need to pull together, because as Benjamin Franklin said, either we all hang together or we will hang separately. And that's where we are today. And it is frightening what's going on, because you see, we have a lot of crises at home and around the world, not just uncontrolled illegal immigration here, not just a bunch of radicals running around the country from every conceivable group trying to destroy the fabric that was created by our founding fathers in 1776 so they can take this country over. But we have crises in North Korea, in Iran, in Venezuela, in other flashpoints around the world. And what are we spending our time doing? Trying to impeach the President of the United States and to convict him. This is exactly what happened. You know, Clinton's impeachment was warranted. You know, Monica Lewinsky was the least of it, but the Republicans didn't even have the guts to do that. They should have gotten over with and moved on. But while that whole saga was going on, and it was orchestrated by the Republicans, Newt Gingrich, not my friend Bob Barr and some others, but Newt Gingrich, just to weaken the Clinton Gores, so Gore wouldn't be elected, you know, as vice president in the 2000 elections. While that was happening, Osama bin Laden was building up, and of course we had 9/11. Now, the same thing is true here. We're taking our eye off the ball, is that we have these crises. The Democrats are trying to create instability for the stock market, so they hope that'll get them to win in 2020. They're trying to destroy the economy. They're trying to destroy the country, because they figure first they have to destroy it, then they'll take charge and they'll build it up, and they're socialist, atheist, pro-radical Muslim, pro-radical atheist, pro-radical feminist, pro-radical LGBTQ communities, pro-radical African-American, pro-radical Jewish left. Okay, remember, I'm a Jewish Christian. I'm very proud to be Jewish. I'm telling you straight up, because I'll also criticize my own people. Okay, and the Jewish left is extremely destructive. They're destructive here. They're destructive in Israel. They're doing the same thing in Israel. They're trying to destabilize that country. And they are equally as bad as the radical Muslims. They're the flip side of the same coin. So we have to call a spade. And that's why we at Freedom Watch are bringing citizens' grand juries to hold the guilty accountable, why we're bringing hard-hitting lawsuits, why we are trying to break up the social media companies that are discriminating against free speech and hold them accountable, why I've become an expert in defamation, because anybody that says anything that challenges the radical left will be destroyed and vilified. And that's why you, people, my friends, my patriots, need to support Freedom Watch. You need to support this channel, because I'm able to say the truth on this channel. And you need to hear the truth, because you're not getting it from Fox News. You're not getting it from the other networks. You're not getting it from the other media. I'm not in it for myself, ladies and gentlemen. I've put my neck on the line here, but I need your support. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Donate to our cause. Tax-deductible contributions. Donate to Cliven Bundy Defense Fund.org. Donate to Corsi Legal Defense Fund. And I want to thank you for being the loyal listeners and patriots and supporters that you are. I'll be right back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, God bless you and your family, and God bless America.